The Arctic wind cuts through Maria Santos like knives as she stumbles across the frozen wasteland, her 5-year-old daughter Lucia clinging to her back and 3-year-old son Diego barely conscious in her arms. The blizzard has erased all landmarks, leaving only endless white death stretching in every direction. Her strength fails. She collapses onto the ice, pulling her children close, whispering desperate prayers as the storm swallows their cries. Through the howling wind, she hears something impossible: the rhythmic panting of dogs, the creak of wooden runners on snow. A massive sled emerges from the whiteout, driven by ANYU, a weathered Inuit hunter whose dark eyes hold secrets deeper than the Arctic night. He stops, studies the dying family, then speaks in accented English, "Get on my sled now." But what happens when they reach his isolated cabin will change everything Maria thought she knew about survival, kindness, and what it means to find home. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maria's body screams in protest as strong hands lift her from the ice. The Inuit hunter moves with practiced efficiency, wrapping her children in thick seal-skin blankets that smell of salt and ancient traditions. The pelts are hand-sewn with intricate patterns, each stitch telling stories of survival passed down through generations. "My children," Maria gasps through chattering teeth, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "Please, they're so cold." ANYU says nothing, but his actions speak volumes. He examines Diego's blue-tinged fingers with gentle precision, then secures both children against his chest beneath his massive parka. Maria watches in amazement as her son's shivering begins to subside against the hunter's body heat. The sled lurches forward with surprising smoothness. 6 powerful huskies strain against their harnesses, their breath creating clouds of steam that instantly freeze in the bitter air. ANYU stands behind Maria, one hand gripping the sled's handle, the other holding a carved bone whistle between his lips. The haunting sound pierces the storm, guiding his dogs through terrain that appears utterly featureless to Maria's untrained eyes. The wind tears at Maria's inadequate clothing, but the seal-skin blankets create a barrier between her family and certain death. She pulls Lucia closer, feeling her daughter's tiny heartbeat against her chest. The child hasn't spoken since they began their desperate flight across the ice 3 days ago. When their shelter collapsed and forced them into the open through the swirling snow, Maria catches glimpses of ANYU's weathered face. Deep lines map decades of harsh weather and hard choices. His dark eyes never leave the path ahead, reading signs in the storm that remain invisible to her. There's something about his quiet competence that begins to calm her panic. This man knows these conditions. He survived them before. The journey seems endless. Time loses meaning in the white void surrounding them. Maria's consciousness drifts between awareness and hypothermic confusion. She finds herself wondering about this stranger who appeared from nowhere. Why was he traveling alone in such dangerous weather? How did he know exactly where to find them? The dogs suddenly veer left, following some landmark only they and their master can perceive. ANYU's whistle changes pitch, a different command that makes the team slow their pace. Through the storm, a dark shape begins to materialize. At first, Maria thinks it might be another trick of her freezing mind, but the outline grows more solid with each passing moment. A cabin emerges from the blizzard like a mirage becoming real. Built low to the ground with thick timber walls, it squats against the storm with the stubborn persistence of something designed to endure. Smoke rises from a stone chimney, promising warmth beyond Maria's current ability to imagine. ANYU brings the sled to a stop beside the cabin's entrance. Without ceremony, he scoops up both children and carries them toward the door. Maria struggles to follow on legs that barely support her weight. Her rescuer kicks the door open and disappears inside with her precious cargo. The cabin's warmth hits Maria like a physical blow. After days in the killing cold, the heated air feels almost painful against her exposed skin. She stumbles through the doorway and stops, overwhelmed by what she sees. The interior reveals a man who values both comfort and preparation. Hand-carved furniture fills the space, each piece showing the attention of someone with time and skill. Shelves line the walls, holding books, tools, and objects whose purposes Maria cannot immediately identify. But it's the photographs scattered throughout the room that capture her attention. Images of people she doesn't recognize, faces that suggest this solitary man wasn't always alone. ANYU has already placed both children on a thick bed of furs near the stone fireplace. He works quickly, removing their wet clothing and wrapping them in dry blankets. His movements are practiced, suggesting experience with hypothermia victims. Diego's lips are beginning to regain color, though he remains unconscious. Will they be all right? Maria asks, her voice hoarse from shouting against the wind. ANYU glances at her briefly, then returns his attention to the children. Time will tell, he says simply. His English carries a slight accent, but his words are precise. They are young. Young bodies fight harder. Maria sinks into a chair near the fire, exhaustion finally claiming her. The cabin's warmth seeps into her bones, bringing the first comfort she's known in weeks. But comfort comes with questions. Who is this man? Why does he live alone in this remote place? And what will he expect in return for saving their lives? Outside, the storm continues its assault on the cabin walls. But inside, for the first time in longer than Maria can remember, her children are safe. Dawn light filters through frost-covered windows, revealing details Maria missed in her exhausted arrival. The cabin is larger than she initially realized, with several rooms branching off from the main living area. Every surface tells stories of a life lived deliberately and alone, yet filled with memories of others. ANYU moves quietly in the kitchen area, preparing something that smells of herbs and warmth. Steam rises from a pot on the wood-burning stove, and Maria's stomach clenches with hunger she'd forgotten she could feel. Her children sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks, their breathing steady and strong under the pile of furs. Thank you, Maria says softly, not wanting to wake Diego and Lucia. I don't know how to repay what you've done. ANYU doesn't respond immediately. He ladles the steaming liquid into a carved wooden bowl and brings it to her. The broth tastes of fish and unfamiliar spices, but it spreads warmth through her body like liquid life. As her strength returns, Maria begins to notice the cabin's curious details. Hand-carved masks hang on one wall, their expressions ranging from fierce to serene. Traditional tools rest alongside modern equipment, a satellite radio beside an ancient-looking harpoon, weathered books stacked next to what appears to be medical supplies. But it's the photographs that draw her attention most strongly. They're scattered throughout the room, like memories refusing to be organized. A young woman with kind eyes and long dark hair appears in many of them, sometimes alone, sometimes beside a younger version of ANYU. In one image, she holds a small child with features that mirror both parents. Your family? Maria asks gently, ANYU's hands still for a moment as he tends the fire. Once, he says simply. Diego stirs, his eyes fluttering open, with the confused awareness of someone waking in an unfamiliar place. He looks around the cabin with wonder rather than fear, his child's adaptability already accepting this new reality. Mama? His voice is still weak but clearer than it's been in days. I'm here, baby. Maria moves to his side, stroking his dark hair. We're safe now. Lucia awakens more gradually, her large eyes taking in every detail of their surroundings. She's always been the observer of the family, quiet and thoughtful beyond her 5 years. Her gaze settles on ANYU with curious interest, rather than the suspicion Maria might have expected. ANYU approaches the children slowly, carrying bowls of the warm broth. His movements are careful, non-threatening, allowing them to become accustomed to his presence. When he kneels beside the bed of furs, Diego actually reaches toward him. Are you an Eskimo? Diego asks with the directness that only children possess. Inuit, ANYU corrects gently. And yes, I am. Do you live in an igloo? Despite everything, Maria finds herself smiling at her son's earnest question. ANYU's expression softens almost imperceptibly, sometimes when I'm hunting far from home. But this cabin suits me better for the long winters. As the children sip their broth, color continues returning to their faces. ANYU examines Diego's fingers and toes with practiced care, checking for signs of frostbite damage. His touch is gentle but thorough, and Maria realizes he possesses medical knowledge beyond basic first aid. "You're a doctor?" she asks. "I know enough to help," he replies, which isn't really an answer but somehow feels complete. The cabin's warmth and safety begin working their magic on all of them. For the first time in months, Maria feels her shoulders relaxing from their constant tension. The children's laughter, absent for so long, begins to return as they explore their surroundings with growing confidence. While exploring, Lucia discovers a small wooden box on a shelf near the window. Her natural curiosity leads her to open it, revealing a delicate gold ring nestled in faded silk. The wedding band catches the morning light, its simple elegance speaking of promises made and love shared. "Lucia, don't touch," Maria says quickly. But ANYU waves away her concern. "It's all right," he says quietly, taking the box from Lucia's small hands. He stares at the ring for a long moment, and Maria sees pain flicker across his weathered features. Her name was Margaret. This was her grandmother's ring. The past tense hits Maria like a physical blow. She understands now why this strong, capable man lives alone in the Arctic wilderness, why his cabin feels like a shrine to memories. He's running from loss just as surely as she was running from poverty and desperation. "I'm sorry," Maria whispers. ANYU closes the box carefully and returns it to its place on the shelf. "The past cannot be changed," he says. "Only survived." His words carry weight that goes beyond simple acceptance. Maria recognizes something in his voice that mirrors her own experience with loss and adaptation. They are both survivors, though their tragedies took different forms. As the day progresses, the storm outside begins to weaken, but inside the cabin, something stronger than weather starts to build. The tentative beginning of understanding between strangers, thrown together by circumstance and held together by need. By the third day, Diego's condition becomes Maria's greatest concern. While Lucia has bounced back with the resilience of youth, Diego's left foot shows alarming signs of frostbite damage. The skin has turned an ominous grayish white, and he cries when anyone touches the affected area. ANYU examines the foot with careful attention, his weathered hands surprisingly gentle as he probes for sensation. From a leather pouch, he produces carved ivory instruments that look ancient yet purposeful. Each tool bears intricate scrimshaw work depicting hunting scenes and spiritual symbols. "These belong to my grandfather's grandfather," ANYU explains as he selects a thin, pointed implement. "Traditional healing tools, passed down through generations of my family." Maria watches nervously as he uses the ivory tools to assess circulation in Diego's foot. The instruments appear primitive compared to modern medical equipment, yet ANYU wields them with the confidence of someone who understands their purpose completely. "Will he lose his toes?" Maria asks, voice tight with fear. "Not if I can help it," ANYU replies. He begins preparing a paste from dried herbs and animal fat, explaining each ingredient as he works. Willow bark for pain, seal oil for healing, and this. He holds up a small vial of dark powder, ground caribou antler for circulation. The mixture smells pungent and earthy, but as ANYU applies it to Diego's foot, the little boy's crying subsides. The traditional remedy seems to provide immediate relief from the burning sensation that has tormented him. "My people have survived in this land for thousands of years," ANYU says as he wraps Diego's foot in soft leather. "We learned to treat injuries that would kill in warmer climates. Your son will keep his toes, but he must rest and let the healing happen." Maria marvels at ANYU's knowledge. He demonstrates techniques for recognizing different stages of frostbite, explains how to restore circulation gradually without causing tissue damage. and teaches her to prepare the herbal remedies from supplies he keeps stored throughout the cabin. "Where did you learn all this?" she asks as they work together to change Diego's dressing. "My grandmother was a healer," ANYU explains. "She taught me that modern medicine has its place, but the old ways saved lives long before hospitals existed. Both knowledge sets have value." As Diego rests, ANYU shows Maria other aspects of his medical preparation. A wooden cabinet reveals supplies that would stock a small clinic: antibiotics, surgical instruments, even a blood pressure cuff. But alongside the modern equipment sit traditional remedies: dried plants, carved bone tools, and containers of various oils and powders. "You're more than just a hunter," Maria observes. ANYU shrugs. "In the Arctic, you become whatever people need you to be. Hunter, healer, teacher, sometimes all three in the same day." His words hint at a life more complex than his isolated existence suggests. Maria notices how he moves with quiet authority, how his eyes constantly assess their environment for potential problems, how he anticipates needs before they become urgent. These aren't skills learned in solitude. LUCIA sits nearby, fascinated by ANYU's careful ministrations to her brother. She asks endless questions about each tool and technique, her young mind absorbing information with remarkable focus. ANYU answers patiently, sometimes demonstrating on her own healthy feet so she can understand the process. "Can I help?" LUCIA asks as ANYU prepares another application of the healing paste. "Of course," ANYU replies, guiding her small hands to assist with the preparation. Healing is something everyone should understand. Maria watches this interaction with wonder. Since their father left 2 years ago, LUCIA has been wary of men, especially strangers. Yet something about ANYU's quiet presence seems to put her at ease. Perhaps it's his genuine respect for her questions, or the way he includes her in important tasks without condescension. Over the following hours, Diego's foot shows marked improvement. The dangerous grey pallor gives way to healthier pink, and sensation begins returning to previously numb areas. ANYU's traditional remedies are accomplishing what Maria feared might require hospital treatment. "The old ways work," ANYU says simply when Maria expresses her amazement. "They work because they had to work. My ancestors couldn't call for help when someone was injured. They learned to heal, or they died." That evening, as Diego sleeps peacefully for the first time since their ordeal began, Maria finds herself watching ANYU with new understanding. This man represents something rare in her experience, someone who combines ancient wisdom with practical skill, who can be both gentle and strong, who saves lives not for reward, but because it's simply what decent people do. The carved ivory tools rest in their leather pouch beside Diego's bed, ready for the next day's treatment. In their smooth surfaces, worn by countless hands over generations, Maria sees the embodiment of survival knowledge passed from parent to child across centuries of harsh existence. She begins to understand that their rescue involved more than just physical salvation from the storm. They've been taken in by someone who represents an entirely different way of living, one based on preparedness, traditional knowledge, and the understanding that true security comes from competence rather than comfort. The morning brings clear skies and bitter cold that makes the air itself seem to crack. ANYU prepares to check his fishing nets beneath the ice, and for the first time since their arrival, he invites Maria to accompany him. Diego is healing well enough to stay with LUCIA by the warm fire. Both children content with the collection of carved wooden toys ANYU has produced from various corners of the cabin. Fresh fish will help their recovery, ANYU explains as they step into the crystalline morning. Protein and oils their bodies need to rebuild strength. Maria follows him across the snow, amazed by how different the landscape appears in sunlight. What seemed like endless white void during the storm now reveals subtle variations in terrain, shadows that indicate wind patterns, and distant landmarks that ANYU reads like a familiar map. At a spot marked by a barely visible wooden stake, ANYU begins clearing snow from a section of ice. Beneath lies a perfectly round hole. kept from freezing by an ingenious system of moving parts that Maria doesn't immediately understand. Traditional ice fishing, ANYU explains, demonstrating the mechanism, but with improvements my grandfather would never have imagined. As he works, Maria notices something metallic glinting beneath his thick parka. When he removes the outer layer to better manipulate the fishing apparatus, two metal tags on a chain become visible against his thermal shirt. Even from a distance, she recognizes military dog tags. The revelation shifts her understanding of this enigmatic man once again. The medical knowledge, the survival expertise, the way he moves with constant awareness of his surroundings, it all begins to make sense. "You served in the military," she says. "It's not really a question." ANYU's hands pause in their work. For a moment, Maria thinks he won't respond. Then he pulls the tags from beneath his shirt, letting them catch the morning light. "Canadian Arctic Rangers," he says quietly. 15 years of service in the most remote places on Earth. The tags bear his name, ANYU Kanguk, along with service numbers and blood type. But they represent far more than mere identification. They explain his preparation, his isolation, his comprehensive survival skills. "Why did you leave?" Maria asks gently. ANYU resumes working the fishing line, his movements precise despite the emotional weight of the conversation. "Some missions leave marks that don't heal properly. Some things you see change how you look at the world." He doesn't elaborate, but Maria senses the depth of experience behind his words. She's met veterans before, seen how military service can both strengthen and wound simultaneously. ANYU carries himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to responsibility and difficult decisions. The first fish strikes with sudden violence, nearly pulling the line from ANYU's grip. He works it skillfully, playing the fight until a substantial Arctic char emerges from the dark water. The fish thrashes silver and pink against the white snow, its beauty almost too vibrant for the stark landscape. "Your children will eat well today," ANYU says with satisfaction. As they work together to prepare the fish, ANYU begins sharing stories of his military service. Not the classified operations or traumatic experiences, but the practical knowledge that kept soldiers alive in impossible conditions. How to read weather patterns that could kill the unprepared. How to find food in landscapes that appeared barren. How to maintain equipment in temperatures that made metal brittle and electronics unreliable. "The Rangers taught me to see the Arctic as an ally rather than an enemy," he explains. "Most people fear this land because they don't understand it. But it provides everything necessary for survival if you know where to look and how to ask." Maria listens with growing fascination. ANYU's military background explains not just his skills, but his entire approach to life. The cabin's meticulous organization, the redundant preparation systems, the calm competence in crisis situations, all products of training designed to keep people alive in hostile environments. "Why here?" she asks, gesturing toward the vast emptiness surrounding them. "Why choose isolation after a career of service?" ANYU secures the fishing hole for their return journey, his movements automatic while he considers her question. Sometimes you need quiet to process noise. Sometimes distance helps you understand what was truly important. The walk back to the cabin passes in comfortable silence, but Maria's mind races with new understanding. ANYU didn't retreat to the wilderness to escape life. He came here to rediscover it. His military service gave him skills to survive anywhere. But something deeper brought him to this specific place, this deliberate solitude. That evening, as they share the fresh fish around the cabin's warming fire, Maria watches ANYU interact with her children with new perspective. His patience with their questions, his gentle guidance of their recovery, his protective presence. These aren't just personality traits. They're the instincts of someone trained to take care of others, someone whose life mission involved keeping people safe. The dog tags rest against his chest, hidden again beneath layers of practical clothing. But their revelation has changed everything Maria thought she understood about their mysterious rescuer. 2 weeks into their stay, The children have transformed from frightened refugees into curious explorers of their new world. Diego's foot has healed remarkably well, leaving only slight discoloration as evidence of his brush with permanent injury. But it's Lucia who surprises everyone with her rapid adaptation to Arctic life. She follows ANYU everywhere, absorbing his lessons about reading weather, identifying safe ice, and understanding the behavior of Arctic wildlife. Her questions never seem to annoy him, and his answers reveal a natural teaching ability that Maria suspects served him well during his military years. "Look," Lucia whispers excitedly, pointing toward movement near the cabin's storage shed. A family of Arctic foxes has been visiting regularly. Drawn by food scraps, ANYU leaves strategically placed. Among Lucia's few possessions, salvaged from their ordeal, is a small cloth doll, worn nearly threadbare by constant companionship. The doll lost an arm during their desperate flight across the ice, and its face has been worn smooth by countless hours of comfort-seeking touches. Maria expects her daughter to be heartbroken by the damage, but Lucia seems to accept it as part of their shared adventure. ANYU notices the broken doll during one of their evening storytelling sessions. Without comment, he examines the damage with the same careful attention he gave Diego's frostbite. The next morning, he appears with tools and materials Maria hadn't seen before: sinew for thread, scraps of fur for fabric, and tiny carved pieces that will become new features. "May I?" he asks Lucia, gesturing toward the damaged toy. Lucia nods solemnly, understanding this is somehow important beyond simple repair. ANYU works with the precision of someone accustomed to detailed handwork. His large, weathered fingers move with surprising delicacy as he reattaches the doll's arm, using traditional sewing techniques. He replaces the worn fabric face with soft rabbit fur, then uses charcoal and berry stains to create new features that somehow capture more personality than the original ever possessed. "In my culture," ANYU explains as he works, "we believe that broken things, when properly mended, become stronger than they were before. The repair becomes part of their story, part of their strength." Maria watches this transformation with growing emotion. ANYU isn't simply fixing a child's toy. He's demonstrating a philosophy of healing that extends far beyond physical injuries. He's showing Lucia that damage doesn't mean worthlessness, that careful attention can restore function and beauty even after trauma. The repaired doll emerges from ANYU's ministrations transformed. Its new face has character and warmth that make it seem almost alive. Lucia clutches it with wonder, running her small fingers over the careful stitching that holds everything together. "She's beautiful," Lucia breathes. "She looks happy now." "She has survived difficult times," ANYU agrees. "Now she can help you remember that surviving makes us stronger, not weaker." Diego watches this process with growing interest. Over the following days, he begins bringing ANYU other broken items: a wooden toy truck with a missing wheel, a picture book with torn pages, even small rocks with interesting cracks. Each receives the same careful attention, the same patient repair that honors both the damage and the potential for restoration. The children's trust in ANYU grows with each demonstration of his caring competence. They begin calling him Uncle ANYU naturally. Without prompting or correction from Maria, the title seems to please him. Though he never explicitly acknowledges it, Maria observes these interactions with complex feelings. She's grateful for ANYU's kindness toward her children, amazed by his patience and skill, yet increasingly aware that their presence in his carefully ordered life represents a significant disruption. He never complains, never suggests they're imposing, but she wonders about the cost of their extended stay. One evening, as ANYU tells the children stories of his ancestors' adventures, Maria notices how his cabin has adapted to accommodate their family. Children's artwork now decorates previously bare walls. Small toys occupy corners that once held only adult possessions. The rigid organization has softened into something more flexible, more alive. "Do you mind?" Maria asks quietly during a moment when the children are absorbed in their play. Having us here disrupting your routine. ANYU considers her question seriously, as he does most things. For 3 years this cabin has been very quiet, he says finally. Perhaps too quiet. Children's laughter is good medicine for places that have forgotten how to be happy. His words reveal more than Maria expected. Behind his competent self-sufficiency lies loneliness, carefully managed but deeply felt. Their presence fills spaces in his life that he perhaps didn't realize were empty. That night, Lucia falls asleep clutching her repaired doll, whispering stories to it about their adventures and their kind Uncle ANYU. The toy that once represented loss and damage has become a symbol of hope and healing. Proof that broken things can indeed become stronger when mended with care and skill. Maria realizes that ANYU's lesson about repair applies to more than dolls and toys. It applies to families, to trust, to the human capacity for recovery after trauma. In fixing her daughter's beloved toy, he's demonstrated that they too can be mended, that their damaged family might emerge stronger from this experience than they were before it began. Another blizzard strikes with little warning, transforming the world outside into a howling white fury that makes their first rescue seem like a gentle breeze. For 3 days, they remain trapped inside the cabin, while wind speeds that could knock down a grown man tear across the landscape with relentless violence. The forced confinement creates an unexpected intimacy among the 4 inhabitants. With nowhere to go and nothing to do but wait for nature's tantrum to exhaust itself, conversations flow more freely than they have since Maria and her children arrived. ANYU keeps a journal she discovers on the 2nd day of their confinement. It's a thick, leather-bound book filled with pages of writing in syllabic Inuktitut characters that look like art to Maria's untrained eyes. He writes in it each evening, documenting weather patterns, wildlife observations, and thoughts he apparently prefers to express in his ancestral language. What do you write about? Lucia asks, with the directness that continues to charm their host. ANYU considers her question, while adding another log to the fire. Outside, the storm pounds against their walls with increasing fury, but inside, the cabin feels safe and warm. Thoughts that are too important to forget, he says finally. Stories my grandmother told me, things I've learned about surviving in this place. Sometimes feelings that are difficult to understand. Can you read some to us? Diego asks, his healing foot propped up on a pile of furs, in English. ANYU asks, and both children nod eagerly. He opens the journal carefully, flipping through pages until he finds an entry that seems appropriate for young ears. His voice takes on a different quality as he translates from Inuktitut, becoming softer, more melodic. The ice speaks to those who listen carefully. Today it told me that change comes, whether we welcome it or resist it. The old ways prepare us for change, but they cannot prevent it. We must be like the Arctic willow, flexible enough to bend without breaking, strong enough to survive the longest winters. Maria finds herself moved by the poetry in his words. This man who appears so practical, so focused on immediate survival, carries the soul of a philosopher. His journal contains wisdom earned through solitude and observation, thought shaped by a culture that values patience and reflection. As the storm continues, ANYU shares more entries, observations about the behavior of his sled dogs, memories of his grandmother's teachings, reflections on the changing seasons and what they represent in the cycle of life and death that governs all existence in the Arctic. You sound like a teacher, Maria observes. My grandmother said everyone is a teacher if they live long enough to learn something worth sharing, ANYU replies. The journal helps me remember lessons I might otherwise lose. The children are fascinated by the strange, beautiful characters of Inuktitut writing. ANYU shows them how each symbol represents a sound, how combinations create words, how the written language captures not just meaning, but the rhythm and flow of spoken thoughts. It looks like pictures, Lucia says, tracing one of the characters with her finger. In some ways, It is, ANYU agrees. Our writing system sees language as shapes, as visual representations of sounds and ideas. Each character tells part of a story. Maria watches this informal lesson with growing appreciation for ANYU's intelligence and cultural knowledge. The military background she discovered earlier explains his survival skills, but his journaling reveals a deeper, more reflective nature. He's not just a man hiding from the world. He's someone who thinks seriously about existence, who values wisdom and tradition. The storm reaches its peak during their second night of confinement. Wind speeds that must exceed 70 miles per hour make the cabin creak and shake, despite its solid construction. Snow drives against the windows with the force of sand, and the temperature drops so low that moisture from their breathing begins forming ice crystals on the inside walls. During the worst of it, when the children huddle close to the fire with worried expressions, ANYU reads from his journal entries about previous storms, his calm voice providing reassurance that this too will pass. His grandmother's words, preserved in syllabic script, speak of endurance and acceptance, of finding peace within chaos. My grandmother lived through storms that lasted for weeks, he tells them. She said the wind teaches patience to those who listen. It reminds us that some forces cannot be fought, only endured. Maria finds unexpected comfort in these ancient philosophies. Her own life has been shaped by struggles against forces beyond her control, poverty, abandonment, the social systems that seem designed to defeat rather than help. ANYU's grandmother's wisdom speaks to experiences she recognizes, offering perspectives she'd never considered. On the third morning, the storm finally exhausts itself, leaving behind a world transformed by fresh snow and crystalline silence. But inside the cabin, something else has changed. The forced intimacy has created deeper bonds among all four inhabitants, understanding that goes beyond simple gratitude for rescue. ANYU closes his journal and returns it to its place on the shelf. But Maria knows she'll remember his words, his grandmother's wisdom, the glimpse into a culture that values reflection and endurance in equal measure. The full moon rises over a landscape scoured clean by the recent storm, its light transforming the snow into a field of diamonds that stretches to the horizon. ANYU declares this the perfect time for teaching the children about their new world, about the traditions that have sustained his people through countless generations in this harsh but beautiful land. From a place of honor above the fireplace, he retrieves an ancient hunting spear. The weapon is clearly old, its wooden shaft worn smooth by countless hands, its bone point carved with intricate designs that seem to tell stories in their flowing lines. This isn't a tool for modern use, it's a piece of family history, an artifact that connects the present to ancestral wisdom. This belonged to my great-grandfather's grandfather, ANYU explains, holding the spear with reverence. It was crafted when my people first came to this region, following the caribou herds across the ice. Diego's eyes widen with fascination. Since recovering from his frostbite, he's shown increasing interest in traditionally masculine activities. Hunting, fishing, the skills that ANYU demonstrates with quiet competence. The spear represents something primal and appealing to a young boy's imagination. Can I touch it? Diego asks. More than touch, ANYU replies. Tonight, you begin learning to make your own. Maria watches with complex emotions as ANYU begins teaching her son the ancient art of spear crafting. Using a piece of driftwood he's been seasoning for months, he shows Diego how to judge the grain, how to shape the shaft with careful knife work, how to balance the weapon for accurate throwing. A spear is more than a tool, ANYU explains as they work. It represents the connection between hunter and hunted, between survival and respect for the animals that give their lives so we may live. Making your own spear teaches patience, precision, and responsibility. The lesson extends far beyond simple woodworking. ANYU shares stories of his ancestors' hunting expeditions, the spiritual beliefs that governed their relationship with the natural world. The understanding that taking life requires gratitude and careful stewardship of resources, Lucia participates in her own way, learning to prepare sinew for binding, gathering materials for the spear point, listening with rapt attention to stories about brave hunters and wise grandmothers. ANYU includes her naturally in the process, demonstrating that traditional roles don't exclude anyone from understanding the complete cycle of survival. "Why did your family keep this spear?" Maria asks as Diego carefully works the wood under ANYU's patient guidance. "Because it remembers," ANYU replies simply. "It remembers the hands that shaped it, the hunts it made successful, the family it helped feed through difficult winters. Some things are too important to forget." Over the following evenings, the spear-making becomes a ritual that gives structure to their time together. Diego's small hands gradually learn to control the carving knife, to feel the wood's response to pressure, to understand the patience required for creating something both functional and beautiful. ANYU tells stories while they work, tales of legendary hunters who could track caribou across vast distances, of successful hunts that saved entire communities from starvation, of the spiritual preparation required before taking an animal's life. These aren't just entertaining stories, they're cultural education, the transmission of values and knowledge from elder to youth. In the old days, ANYU explains, boys Diego's age would begin learning these skills from their fathers and grandfathers. The knowledge passed from generation to generation, ensuring survival skills never died out. Maria realizes she's witnessing something rare and precious, the genuine transfer of cultural knowledge, the kind of education that can't be found in books or schools. Diego isn't just learning to carve wood. He's absorbing an entire worldview based on respect, preparation, and understanding of natural cycles. The ancient spear hangs above them throughout these sessions, a silent witness to the continuation of traditions that stretch back centuries. In its weathered surface, Maria sees the embodiment of persistence, the human determination to preserve knowledge and pass it forward despite all obstacles. Diego's miniature spear takes shape slowly, its proportions perfect for his small hands, its balance adjusted for his developing strength. ANYU critiques and corrects with the patience of someone who understands that mastery requires time and repetition. "Uncle ANYU," Diego says one evening, as they put the finishing touches on his project, "will you teach me to hunt with it?" ANYU exchanges a meaningful glance with Maria before answering. "Hunting is not just about weapons, Diego. It's about understanding the land, respecting the animals, knowing when to take and when to leave alone. These lessons take years to learn properly, but you'll teach me if your mother agrees and if you prove worthy of the responsibility," ANYU replies solemnly. Diego's chest swells with pride at this conditional acceptance. For the first time since his father left, he has a male role model who takes his development seriously, who offers knowledge and skills instead of empty promises. The completed spear, though small and decorative rather than functional, represents something profound for all of them. Diego has created his first traditional tool under expert guidance. ANYU has passed on knowledge his ancestors trusted him to preserve. Maria has watched her son connect with cultural wisdom that offers him identity and purpose. That night, Diego sleeps with his miniature spear beside his bed, already dreaming of the day he might be skilled enough to use its full-sized ancestor, the crackling. Static from the emergency radio breaks the peaceful rhythm of their evening routine like a gunshot in the quiet cabin. For weeks, the device has remained silent on its shelf, just another piece of ANYU's comprehensive survival equipment. Now it demands attention with urgent broadcasts that transform their sanctuary into something suddenly fragile and temporary. ANYU adjusts the antenna and fine-tunes the frequency until voices emerge clearly from the speaker. The first transmission makes Maria's blood run cold, a missing persons bulletin describing her and her children, broadcast by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Missing woman. Maria Santos, age 31, Hispanic, 5 feet 4 inches tall. Last seen with her 2 children, Diego Santos, age 3, and Lucia Santos, age 5. Believed to be traveling on foot in the Nunavut territory. Considered endangered due to extreme weather conditions. The children look up from their evening activities with confused expressions. Diego doesn't fully understand the implications, but Lucia's intelligence grasps immediately that something serious is happening. "Why are they looking for us?" Lucia asks. "We're not lost anymore." Maria's heart pounds as she realizes the complexity of their situation. Someone, probably social services from their last known location, must have reported them missing when they failed to appear for a scheduled appointment. The bureaucratic machinery designed to protect children has branded their rescue as a potential abduction. ANYU's expression grows increasingly grim as additional broadcasts provide more details. The search involves multiple agencies, aircraft equipped with thermal imaging, and ground teams trained in Arctic rescue operations. More troubling still, the broadcasts describe ANYU himself as a person of interest in their disappearance. "They think you kidnapped us," Maria says quietly. Understanding the full scope of their predicament, "It appears so," ANYU replies. His military training evident in how quickly he assesses the tactical situation. Missing woman and children, isolated man with military background, the narrative writes itself. A follow-up broadcast reveals information that chills Maria to the bone. ANYU's military service record has been accessed, including details about disciplinary actions and psychological evaluations following his discharge. The official description paints him as potentially unstable, possibly dangerous, certainly suspicious for living alone in such an isolated location. "They don't understand," Diego says, moving protectively closer to ANYU. "Uncle ANYU saved us. He's not bad. Children often defend their captors," Maria quotes grimly, remembering social services training from years ago. "That's exactly what they'll expect you to say." The radio continues its damaging narrative throughout the evening. Expert commentators discuss the psychology of wilderness isolationists, the vulnerability of homeless families, the statistical likelihood of violence in such situations. Each broadcast makes their reality seem more threatening, their peaceful existence more sinister. ANYU studies the radio with the analytical detachment of someone trained to solve complex problems under pressure. "This equipment can transmit as well as receive," he says finally. "We could contact them directly, explain the situation." "And say what?" Maria asks. "That I willingly stayed here for weeks instead of seeking proper help for my children. That I'm living unmarried with a man in an isolated cabin. That my children are being raised according to traditional practices instead of attending school." The questions hang in the air like accusations. Maria realizes that their idyllic existence, when viewed through official eyes, appears highly irregular. Social services could easily argue that she's demonstrated poor judgment, that the children are being deprived of proper education and medical care, that their living situation poses ongoing risks. "Maybe we should contact them," Maria says reluctantly. "Explain everything before the situation gets worse." ANYU adjusts the radio settings, preparing to transmit, but then stops. "Are you certain that's what you want? Once we break silence, everything changes. They'll want to separate you from the children while they investigate. They'll want to place Diego and Lucia in protective custody while determining whether charges should be filed." The prospect terrifies Maria more than the storm that nearly killed them. She's seen how child welfare systems operate, how families can be destroyed by bureaucratic processes designed to protect them. Her children are healthier and happier than they've been in months, but officials will see only irregularity and potential danger. "What if we don't respond?" she asks. "The search will intensify," ANYU replies matter-of-factly. "Eventually they'll find us. And when they do, our silence will be interpreted as evidence of wrongdoing." Lucia moves to stand between her mother and the radio. her small face set with determination that reminds Maria of her own stubborn streak. "I don't want to leave Uncle ANYU," she says firmly. "This is our home now." The simple declaration pierces Maria's heart. In the span of a few weeks, her daughter has found something here that she'd never experienced before. Security, continuity, a sense of belonging. The cabin has become more than shelter. It's become the home they never had. The radio crackles with another update, reporting that search aircraft will begin systematic grid searches at first light. Time for decision-making is running out, compressed into hours rather than the days or weeks that such momentous choices deserve. Outside, the aurora borealis begins its nightly dance across the clear sky, painting the landscape in ethereal greens and blues. The natural beauty seems to mock their human complications, offering perspective that makes official concerns seem both urgent and ultimately insignificant, compared to the vast indifference of the Arctic night. The sound of helicopter rotors cuts through the morning silence like mechanical thunder, growing louder with each passing moment until it seems to fill the entire world. Maria clutches the legal custody papers she's carried since fleeing their previous life, worn documents that prove her parental rights but may not be enough to protect her family from well-intentioned authorities. Through the cabin window, she watches the aircraft circle once before landing in a swirl of snow and engine noise. The helicopter disgorges 4 figures, 2 RCMP officers in cold weather gear, a woman in a heavy parka who carries herself with bureaucratic authority, and a man with medical equipment who's obviously been brought along to assess the children's condition. ANYU moves with calm efficiency, securing items around the cabin that might be misinterpreted as weapons or evidence of improper living conditions. His military training serves him well in preparing for what amounts to an inspection by hostile forces. "Remember," he tells Maria quietly, "you are their mother. You made decisions to protect them. Don't let anyone convince you that survival was the wrong choice." Diego and Lucia press close to Maria's sides, sensing the tension without fully understanding its source. They've heard the adult conversations about authorities and investigations, but the reality of uniformed strangers arriving to evaluate their lives hits differently than abstract discussions. The knock on the door comes with official authority, firm, demanding, impossible to ignore. ANYU opens it to reveal Sergeant Patricia Wells of the RCMP, her expression professionally neutral but clearly prepared for potential resistance. "Mr. Kangook, I'm Sergeant Wells. We're here to check on the welfare of Maria Santos and her children. May we come in?" "Of course," ANYU replies, stepping aside with the courtesy that disarms aggressive authority. They're all here and healthy. The social worker Janet Morrison enters with the practiced eye of someone trained to assess domestic situations quickly. Her gaze takes in the cabin's organization, the children's appearance, the obvious care that's been invested in their well-being. She carries herself with the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions about other people's families. "Miss Santos," Sergeant Wells addresses Maria directly, "we need to ask you some questions about your circumstances and the children's welfare." Maria stands straighter, drawing strength from the custody papers in her hand and the knowledge that her children are genuinely thriving. "I'm their mother," she says clearly. "I have legal custody, and I made the choice to accept Mr. Kangook's help when we were dying in the storm." The medical officer, Dr. Robert Hayes, immediately focuses on Diego and Lucia with professional concern. "I need to examine both children to assess their health and any potential medical issues." "They've received excellent care," Maria responds. But she knows that official protocols must be followed regardless of obvious evidence. Dr. Hayes' examination reveals what Maria hoped but feared officials might not believe. Both children are not only healthy, but demonstrably better nourished and more robust than typical for their ages. Diego's frostbite has healed without permanent damage. Lucia shows no signs of trauma or neglect. Their health is remarkable, Dr. Hayes admits to his colleagues. "Better than many children I see in conventional family situations." Janet Morrison interviews the children separately, standard procedure designed to detect coaching or intimidation. But Lucia and Diego's responses clearly reflect genuine affection for their Uncle ANYU and obvious happiness with their current situation. "Are you scared of Mr. Kanguk?" Morrison asks Lucia during her private interview. "No," Lucia responds with 5-year-old certainty.
"He fixed my doll."
"He teaches me about animals. He makes good soup." Diego's interview yields similar results. When asked about his treatment, he proudly shows the miniature spear he's been crafting, explaining ANYU's lessons about patience and respect for nature with enthusiasm that can't be faked. Sergeant Wells questions ANYU about his background, his motivations for helping the family, his understanding of the legal implications of their situation, his military record, while containing the disciplinary actions that triggered official concern, also reveals decorated service and clean conduct for most of his career. "Why didn't you report finding them immediately?" Wells asks. "Because they were dying," ANYU replies simply. "Medical emergency takes precedence over paperwork." By the time they were stable enough for transport, the weather had turned dangerous again. Maria produces her custody papers during the formal interview, documents that prove her legal authority to make decisions about her children's welfare. The papers are worn from being carried through their ordeal, but they're official and unambiguous. "These establish your parental rights," Morrison acknowledges. "But we still need to assess whether this living situation serves the children's best interests." "Look at them," Maria says, gesturing toward Diego and Lucia, who are demonstrating hunting techniques they've learned from ANYU. "When have you ever seen healthier, happier children?" The officials exchange glances that suggest their expectations haven't aligned with reality. They came prepared to rescue endangered children from a potentially dangerous situation. Instead, they found a thriving family whose unconventional living arrangement appears to be working remarkably well. The investigation continues throughout the morning, but the tone gradually shifts from suspicious interrogation to curious inquiry. The evidence overwhelmingly supports the family's claims about their positive experience, making it increasingly difficult to justify separating them. As the day progresses, Maria begins to hope that their custody papers and the obvious well-being of her children might be enough to preserve the life they've built together in this remote but nurturing sanctuary. 3 days after the officials' departure, their promised follow-up investigation arrives in the form of a more extensive team, including child psychologists, cultural experts, and a family court representative. The stakes have clearly escalated beyond simple welfare checks into formal proceedings that could permanently alter their living situation. During the tense interviews that follow, Diego surprises everyone by presenting a small carved amulet to the lead investigator. The charm, made from walrus ivory and shaped like a protective spirit, bears intricate designs that ANYU helped him carve over many patient evenings. It represents Diego's growing connection to Inuit culture and his spiritual adoption into ANYU's family traditions. "Uncle ANYU gave this to me," Diego explains with 3-year-old sincerity, "because he says I'm his nephew now. And nephews need protection from bad spirits." The investigator, Dr. Helen Martinez, examines the amulet with professional interest while questioning its cultural significance. As a specialist in child psychology, she recognizes the deep bonding implied by such traditional gift-giving. But she also worries about cultural appropriation and the complexity of a non-indigenous child being raised within indigenous traditions. "This is a significant cultural artifact," Dr. Martinez observes. "Mr. Kanguk, what does giving such an item to Diego represent in your traditional understanding?" ANYU explains the spiritual significance with careful respect for both cultures involved. "In my people's tradition, protective amulets are given to children who have been accepted into the family circle. It represents commitment to their well-being, responsibility for their guidance, and recognition of their place within our spiritual community." But Diego isn't Inuit, Dr. Martinez points out. Isn't there concern about cultural appropriation or confusion regarding his identity? Culture isn't blood, ANYU replies thoughtfully. It's choice, practice, and acceptance. This boy has chosen to learn our ways. I have chosen to teach him. The amulet represents those choices, not ownership of something that cannot be owned. The cultural expert on the team, Dr. James Walking Bear, nods with understanding that suggests personal experience with such complexities. Many indigenous communities practice adoption across ethnic lines when circumstances warrant. The question isn't whether it's appropriate, but whether it serves the child's best interests. Maria watches these exchanges with growing anxiety. Each question seems designed to find problems with their unconventional family structure, to identify reasons why separation might be necessary despite the obvious evidence of her children's well-being. During her private interview, LUCIA clutches her repaired doll while explaining her attachment to their current life. Her articulate responses impress the investigators, but also raise concerns about whether she's being coached or whether her preferences reflect genuine choice. Do you miss your old life? Dr. Martinez asks gently. What old life? LUCIA responds with puzzling simplicity. We were cold and hungry and scared. Now we're warm and full and happy. Why would I miss being scared? The investigators struggle with the implications of her response. Standard protocols assume that children benefit from stability, familiar environments, and conventional family structures. But LUCIA's previous stable environment involved homelessness, uncertainty, and constant stress about basic survival needs. The psychological evaluations reveal children who are not only healthy, but demonstrably more secure and confident than typical for their ages and backgrounds. Their play behaviors show creativity and engagement. Their emotional responses indicate strong attachment to both Maria and ANYU. Their intellectual development suggests stimulating educational experiences despite the absence of formal schooling. This is unprecedented. Dr. Martinez admits to her colleagues during a private consultation. The children show every sign of thriving in what should be considered a disruptive, irregular situation. The court representative, Magistrate Robert Carlyle, focuses on legal precedents and practical considerations. The law requires demonstrable harm to justify removing children from their mother's custody. Regardless of how unconventional their living arrangements might appear, the question before us isn't whether this situation is typical, Magistrate Carlyle explains, but whether it's harmful. The evidence suggests quite the opposite. Dr. Walking Bear provides crucial perspective by explaining how traditional indigenous child rearing often involves extended family networks, cultural mentorship, and spiritual guidance from elders. Diego's adoption into ANYU's cultural practices represents continuation of ancient traditions rather than dangerous innovation. What we're witnessing, Dr. Walking Bear tells the team, is traditional indigenous family formation in response to crisis. The ethnicity of the participants matters less than the authenticity of the relationships and the effectiveness of the outcomes. The amulet becomes symbolic of larger questions about family, culture, and belonging. Its presence around Diego's neck represents his acceptance into a spiritual community that transcends conventional definitions of family structure. The investigators must determine whether such cultural flexibility serves his interests or threatens his development. As the evaluation continues, Maria realizes that the small carved charm represents everything she hopes to preserve about their new life. It symbolizes Diego's security, ANYU's commitment, and the spiritual dimension of their unconventional family bond. The investigators retreat to deliberate, leaving the family to wait anxiously for decisions that will determine whether the protective amulet Diego wears will continue to guard him in the place he now calls home, or whether it will become a memento of a brief period of happiness. Before official intervention returned them to uncertainty, the legal papers spread across ANYU's kitchen table. represent more than bureaucratic formalities. They're the foundation for transforming their unconventional family into something the outside world can recognize and protect. Attorney Sarah Blackhorse, a specialist in Indigenous family law, has driven 8 hours through dangerous winter conditions to help them navigate the complex process of formal adoption. Maria stares at the documents with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The adoption papers would legally establish ANYU as Diego and Lucia's father, providing security and permanence that their current arrangement cannot guarantee. But signing them also feels like acknowledging that love and commitment require official validation to be real. These documents establish joint custody, Attorney Blackhorse explains, pointing to specific clauses she's crafted to address their unique situation. Maria retains full parental rights, while ANYU gains legal authority to make educational and medical decisions. More importantly, it creates legal protection against future challenges to your family structure. ANYU studies the papers with the careful attention he applies to all important documents. His signature will legally bind him to responsibilities he's already embraced emotionally, but it will also subject him to governmental oversight and potential interference in decisions he's previously made. Independently, what happens if authorities decide our arrangement isn't in the children's best interests? Maria asks. With formal adoption, they'd need to prove substantial harm to justify separation, Attorney Blackhorse replies. Without it, any concerned party can challenge your living situation and potentially succeed based on irregularity alone. The children play quietly nearby, building elaborate structures with carved wooden blocks ANYU made during long winter evenings. They're unaware that adult signatures on legal documents will determine whether their family continues or faces forced dissolution. Diego's latest creation is a replica of their cabin, complete with tiny furniture and miniature figures representing each family member. His architectural accuracy impresses the adults, demonstrating how completely he's internalized this place as his permanent home. Will this make Uncle ANYU our real daddy? Lucia asks, having overheard enough adult conversation to grasp the essential question. He's already your real daddy in every way that matters, Maria replies carefully. These papers just help other people understand that. The adoption process reveals complexities Maria hadn't anticipated. Background checks, home studies, financial evaluations, and psychological assessments all designed to verify what everyone already knows, that ANYU provides excellent care and the children thrive under his guidance. Attorney Blackhorse has structured the documents to acknowledge their cultural complexity. The adoption recognizes ANYU's indigenous heritage while respecting the children's Hispanic background, creating legal space for bicultural identity development. Many indigenous communities practice traditional adoption without legal documentation, she explains. These papers bridge traditional practices with contemporary legal requirements. The financial disclosure requirements particularly challenge ANYU's private nature. His military pension, savings, and the cabin's value must all be documented for court review. Maria discovers that her rescuer possesses significantly more resources than his simple lifestyle suggests, evidence of careful planning and conservative spending rather than poverty. Why? Do you live so simply if you can afford more? Maria asks during a quiet moment. Because simple life is good life, ANYU replies. Complicated possessions create complicated problems. What we have here is enough. The home study process brings social workers to evaluate their living arrangements, educational provisions, and emotional environment. Their investigator, MS Carol Peterson, arrives expecting to find makeshift accommodations but instead discovers a meticulously organized household that meets or exceeds conventional standards. The children's educational progress is remarkable. Ms. Peterson notes after reviewing ANYU's teaching materials and the children's work samples. Their reading levels, mathematical understanding, and cultural knowledge exceed typical benchmarks for their ages. Diego proudly demonstrates his writing skills, showing how he can write his name in both English and syllabic Inuktitut. LUCIA recites traditional stories with dramatic flair, complete with hand gestures and voice changes that reveal deep engagement with her lessons. The psychological evaluation proves the most intrusive aspect of the process. Dr. Elizabeth Wong interviews each family member separately and together, probing for signs of coercion, manipulation, or unhealthy dependency. Diego, how do you feel about Mr. Kanguk becoming your legal father? Dr. Wong asks. Happy, Diego responds with 3-year-old certainty. Uncle ANYU teaches me things. He fixes my always. He makes good pancakes. Lucia's response demonstrates more sophisticated understanding. ANYU loves us like family loves. Making it official just helps confused grown-ups understand what we already know. The process stretches across weeks of interviews, evaluations, and documentation. Each requirement feels simultaneously necessary and invasive, protecting the children's interests while questioning the authenticity of relationships that have developed naturally through shared hardship and mutual care. When Attorney Blackhorse finally declares all requirements satisfied, the family gathers around the table to sign documents that will legally recognize what their hearts established months ago. The adoption papers represent both victory and compromise. Official validation of their unconventional family at the cost of privacy and independence they once took for granted. As Maria and ANYU sign their names to the formal adoption agreement, Diego climbs onto ANYU's lap with complete trust, unaware that legal documents are transforming their guardian into their father through the power of official recognition. The first crocus pushes through the melting snow like a purple banner, announcing winter's surrender to spring. Diego discovers it during his morning exploration around the cabin, and his excited shouts bring the entire family running to witness this small miracle of renewal. The tiny Arctic bloom, no larger than a thumbnail, represents everything their family has achieved through the dark months of legal uncertainty and official scrutiny. Look, Papa, Diego calls, using the title naturally, now that the adoption papers have made their relationship official. It's the first flower. ANYU kneels beside his son, examining the delicate petals with reverence appropriate to something that has survived impossible conditions to bloom again. This little flower teaches us about persistence, he says softly. It waited through the long darkness, stayed strong under the snow, and emerged when conditions became right. Maria photographs the moment with a camera Attorney Blackhorse suggested they use to document the children's development and family activities. The image captures Diego's wonder, ANYU's gentle guidance, and the fragile beauty of new life emerging from harsh circumstances. The legal victory, allowing their family to remain together, has transformed more than their official status. The community's response to their story has been overwhelmingly positive, with local newspapers featuring articles about their unconventional adoption and the children's remarkable adaptation to Arctic life. Reverend Michael Sacred Feather from the nearby indigenous community arrives that afternoon to perform a traditional blessing ceremony for their newly formalized family. He brings with him eagle feathers, sage for smudging, and prayers in Inuktitut that honor both their legal union and spiritual bonds. The Creator brings families together in mysterious ways, Reverend Sacred Feather explains as he prepares the ceremony. Legal papers satisfy human law, but spiritual recognition satisfies the deeper laws that govern love and commitment. The blessing takes place outside, where the spring air carries hints of warmth and the promise of longer days ahead. The children participate solemnly, understanding that something important is happening even if they don't grasp all the cultural significance. Lucia holds the small crocus carefully throughout the ceremony. Having asked permission to pick it for the blessing, the flower becomes part of the ritual, representing new beginnings, survival against odds, and the beauty that emerges from patience and proper care. This flower chose today to bloom, Reverend Sacred Feather observes, just as your family chose this season to become official. Both represent hope, triumphing over hardship. The ceremony concludes with the family receiving traditional names in Inuktitut that reflect their personalities and roles within their adopted community. Diego becomes Tapisa, meaning the one who asks questions. Lucia receives Nuka, meaning little sister who watches carefully. Maria is honored as Mama, or Nak, recognizing her as the strong woman who protects her children. ANYU's existing name is confirmed and blessed in his new role as father and family leader. That evening, they plant the crocus in a special place near the cabin's entrance, where it will return each spring to remind them of this day. The simple act of transplanting feels symbolic of their own journey from one life to another, from uncertainty to security, from survival to thriving. The children help prepare the soil with tools ANYU has taught them to use properly. Diego's small hands work the earth with growing confidence, while Lucia carefully measures the proper depth for planting. Their collaboration demonstrates the family teamwork that has impressed every official who has evaluated their situation. Will it grow here? LUCIA asks as they water the transplanted flower. If we take proper care of it, ANYU replies. Plants, like families, need attention, patience, and the right conditions to flourish. Maria documents this planting ceremony as well, understanding that these photographs will become treasured memories of their transformation from desperate refugees to thriving family. The images capture not just events but emotions, the joy of children who feel secure, the pride of parents who have successfully protected their loved ones, the peace of people who have found their place in the world. As spring progresses, the crocus establishes itself in its new location, sending down roots and preparing for future blooms. The children check on it daily, measuring its growth and celebrating each new sign of vitality. The flower becomes their family mascot, representing their shared journey from near death in the Arctic storm to legal recognition as a family unit. Its annual return will mark the anniversary of their formal adoption, a natural calendar that connects their human milestone to the eternal cycles of death and renewal that govern all life in the Arctic. That night, as the family prepares for sleep in their legally protected home, Diego places the photograph of his first crocus discovery beside his bed. The image captures a moment of pure wonder, a child's excitement at discovering beauty in an unlikely place. Next spring, there will be more flowers, ANYU promises as he tucks Diego into bed. And the spring after that, even more. That's how hope works. It grows stronger each year if you tend it properly. The crocus sleeps safely in Arctic soil, its roots spreading deeper with each passing day, just as their families' bonds grow stronger through shared experiences and mutual care. The camera clicks as Maria adjusts the timer setting, rushing back to join her family for their first official portrait as a legally recognized unit. After months of uncertainty and investigation, this simple photograph will serve as proof of their transformation from desperate strangers to loving family, documentation of something that began with a rescue in a blizzard and culminated in legal adoption papers. ANYU has built a tripod from carved wooden pieces, his engineering skills evident in the precision joinery and stable construction. The contraption holds Maria's digital camera at exactly the right height and angle to capture all 4 family members in front of their cabin, with the Arctic landscape stretching endlessly behind them. Everyone ready? Maria calls, pressing the timer button and hurrying to take her place beside ANYU. Diego sits on his father's lap while Lucia stands between her parents, all of them wearing traditional parkas that ANYU commissioned from local artisans as gifts to celebrate their adoption finalization. The camera's automatic flash illuminates their faces against the late spring evening light, capturing expressions of genuine happiness and hard-won security. This isn't a posed studio portrait, but a family documenting their own milestone, recording evidence of their journey from desperate survival to comfortable belonging. When Maria reviews the digital image on the camera's small screen, she sees something remarkable. The four people in the photograph look like they belong together, their faces reflecting shared experiences and mutual affection that no amount of legal documentation could create artificially. "We look like a real family," Lucia observes with satisfaction, studying the image over her mother's shoulder. "We are a real family," ANYU corrects gently. The photograph just helps us remember this moment when we made it official. The portrait session continues as they experiment with different poses and settings, creating a collection of images that will become treasured memories. Some photos capture formal poses. Others show candid interactions, Diego demonstrating his spear carving skills, Lucia explaining her latest reading achievements, Maria and ANYU working together to prepare their evening meal. Each image tells part of their story. The cabin's expansion is visible in the background, showing new rooms ANYU has added to accommodate their growing family. The children's artwork decorates windows and walls, evidence of creative development and emotional security. Their comfortable interactions with each other reveal the natural family dynamics that impressed every social worker and psychologist who evaluated their situation. "These pictures will show people who we really are," Maria says as she reviews the day's photography. "Not the crisis that brought us together, but the family we've become." The photographs serve multiple purposes beyond personal memory-making. Attorney Blackhorse has requested documentation of their family life for the final adoption files, evidence that their legal relationship reflects genuine emotional bonds rather than bureaucratic convenience. Dr. Wong, the psychologist who evaluated them during the adoption process, specifically asked for evidence of normal family activities and interactions. The photographs show children engaged in age-appropriate play, parents participating in educational activities, and family members clearly comfortable with each other's presence. "Look at this one," Diego says, pointing to an image where he's teaching Lucia to hold his miniature spear properly. "I'm a good teacher like Papa." The photographs reveal how completely the children have adapted to their Arctic lifestyle. Their confident interaction with traditional tools, their comfort in extreme weather conditions, their obvious affection for their adoptive father, all documented in images that speak more powerfully than any written report. That evening, they select the best family portrait for printing and framing, choosing an image that captures both their individual personalities and their collective identity. The photograph will hang in their cabin's main room, joining other family pictures that trace their journey from rescue to adoption. "This is our first official family picture," Maria explains to the children as she frames the selected image. "Someday, when you're grown up with families of your own, you'll look at this and remember when we became legally official." ANYU studies the framed photograph with the same careful attention he applies to all important documents. "In my culture, photographs capture more than appearance," he says thoughtfully. "They hold the spirit of the moment, preserving not just how people looked, but how they felt." The completed family portrait takes its place of honor on the mantel, surrounded by other meaningful objects. Margaret's wedding ring in its wooden box, Diego's traditional amulet, Lucia's repaired doll, and the small collection of documents that prove their legal status as a family. "Now everyone who visits will know we belong together," Lucia says with satisfaction. Admiring their official family image, the photograph becomes more than documentation. It becomes proof of possibility, evidence that families can form through choice and commitment rather than just biology. That love and legal recognition can coexist to create something stronger than either could achieve alone. As spring settles into their Arctic landscape, the family portrait watches over their daily activities, a constant reminder of how far they've traveled from that desperate night in the blizzard to this moment of legal security and emotional fulfillment. The manuscript spreads across their expanded kitchen table, hundreds of pages documenting survival techniques, family formation strategies, and practical wisdom that ANYU and Maria have developed through their unique experience. The survival manual they're writing together represents more than personal memoir. It's becoming a guidebook for other families facing crisis, a resource that could help others navigate the complex intersection of emergency survival and child welfare systems. Chapter 12 needs work, Maria says, reviewing their section on dealing with social services during crisis situations. We should include more about documentation, about how having the right papers can make the difference between keeping your family together and losing them to bureaucracy. ANYU nods while typing their revisions on the laptop computer that social services provided for the children's educational needs. His hunting-scarred fingers move awkwardly across the keyboard, but his determination to share their knowledge overrides his discomfort with modern technology. Their collaboration on the manual has revealed complementary strengths neither expected. When they first began working together, Maria's experience with social systems provides practical insights about navigating bureaucracy, while ANYU's survival expertise offers concrete techniques for maintaining family safety in extreme conditions. We need to emphasize that survival isn't just about staying alive, ANYU says, pausing his typing to consider their next section. It's about preserving what makes life worth living: family bonds, cultural identity, hope for the future. The manual addresses questions they wish someone had answered during their own crisis. How do you prove to authorities that unconventional choices serve children's best interests? What documentation should families carry when fleeing dangerous situations? How do you maintain children's emotional stability while adults navigate legal complexities? Their writing process involves the entire family. Diego and Lucia contribute their perspectives on adapting to new environments, learning traditional skills, and adjusting to sudden changes in living situations. Their chapters, dictated to Maria and carefully edited for clarity, provide insights that adult experts often miss. Kids need to know they're safe before they can learn new things, Lucia explains during one of their dictation sessions. Uncle ANYU made us feel safe first, then taught us stuff. That's different from school, where they try to teach you even when you're scared. The children's contributions add authenticity that academic approaches typically lack. Their descriptions of fear, adaptation, and eventual happiness provide emotional context for the practical techniques the manual teaches. Publisher Janet Torres from Northern Lights. Press has expressed serious interest in their manuscript after reading sample chapters that attorney Blackhorse shared with her. The publisher specializes in books addressing indigenous issues and unconventional family structures, making their story a natural fit for her catalog. This isn't just another survival guide, Torres explains during their telephone conference. You're documenting family formation under extreme circumstances, showing how crisis can create stronger bonds than conventional situations typically produce. The manual's unique perspective addresses gaps in existing literature about emergency preparedness and family preservation. Most survival guides focus on individual techniques, while family services manuals assume conventional living situations. Their book bridges both worlds, offering practical advice for families whose circumstances force them outside normal support systems. We're not writing for people who plan to live in the Arctic, Maria clarifies during their discussion with Torres. We're writing for families whose circumstances force them to improvise, to find strength they didn't know they possessed, to create security from whatever resources are available. The manual includes sections on recognizing hypothermia in children, maintaining educational progress during disrupted living situations, preparing documentation that proves parental fitness under stress, and building relationships with authority figures who initially view unconventional choices with suspicion. Their chapter on cultural adaptation particularly interests Torres. You're describing how families can adopt beneficial traditions from other cultures without appropriating or displacing their own identities, she observes. That's incredibly relevant for many modern families dealing with cultural complexity. Writing the manual has become therapeutic for all family members, providing structure for processing their experiences and framework for understanding their transformation. The project gives meaning to their struggle by converting personal hardship into potential help for others facing similar challenges. If this book helps even one family stay together when authorities want to separate them, all our work will be worthwhile, ANYU says as they prepare another chapter for submission. Diego helps by drawing illustrations that demonstrate proper techniques for various survival skills. His artwork shows children successfully performing tasks that most people assume require adult strength and experience, building fires, preparing traditional foods, reading weather patterns. The manual represents their evolution from crisis survivors to community resources, from people who needed help to people qualified to provide it. Their credibility comes not from academic credentials, but from successful navigation of systems designed to challenge unconventional choices. As they continue writing, revising and expanding their manuscript, the survival manual becomes both memoir and mission, documenting their journey while creating tools that might help other families write their own stories of successful adaptation and determined love. The silver Arctic char struggles magnificently at the end of Diego's fishing line, its powerful tail creating spray patterns that catch the morning sunlight like scattered diamonds. At 6 years old, Diego has developed the patience and skill necessary for independent fishing, and this beautiful catch represents his first successful solo hunt, a milestone that fills ANYU with pride and connects the boy to generations of Arctic hunters who learned these same waters. Keep the line steady, ANYU coaches from nearby, close enough to help if needed, but far enough away to let Diego handle the challenge independently. Let the fish tire itself out fighting. Your job is to stay calm and keep pressure consistent. Diego's face shows intense concentration as he works the struggling fish toward shore. His small hands grip the traditional fishing rod with confidence earned through months of practice under ANYU's patient guidance. The miniature spear he carved last winter hangs at his side, symbolic of his growing mastery of traditional skills. The fish breaks the surface again, revealing its full size, nearly 2 feet of prime Arctic char that will provide excellent eating for the family's evening meal. Diego's eyes widen with excitement, but his hands remain steady on the fishing equipment. "Papa, look how big!" he calls, his voice carrying across the water with pure joy. "Very impressive," ANYU agrees. "Your grandmother Margaret would be proud to see such skillful fishing from someone so young." The mention of Margaret brings warmth to the moment. Though Diego never met ANYU's first wife, she's become part of the family mythology, a gentle presence whose memory enriches their shared stories and traditions. Her imagined approval means something special to Diego, connecting him to the longer family history he's inherited through adoption. With ANYU's guidance, Diego successfully lands his catch, cradling the beautiful fish with respect and gratitude that reflects the cultural lessons embedded in every hunting and fishing expedition. The boy has learned that taking life for food requires acknowledgement of the sacrifice, appreciation for the gift, and commitment to waste nothing. "Thank you, fish," Diego says solemnly, following the ritual ANYU taught him for honoring the animals that sustain their family. "Thank you for giving your life so we can eat well tonight." The successful catch represents more than just fishing skill development. It demonstrates Diego's integration into Arctic life, his comfort with traditional practices, his growing confidence in challenging environments. At 6 years old, he possesses survival abilities that many adults lack, knowledge that could someday save his life or the lives of others. Maria photographs the moment from the cabin porch, capturing Diego's proud smile as he displays his catch for the camera. These images will join their growing collection of family memories, documentation of the children's development, and their remarkable adaptation to Arctic living. "I caught dinner," Diego announces as he carries his fish toward the cabin, his chest swelling with the satisfaction of contributing meaningfully to family welfare. Lucia meets them at the door, equally excited about her brother's achievement. At 7 years old, she's developed her own expertise in food preparation and preservation, skills that complement Diego's hunting abilities and create a comprehensive knowledge base for both children. "Can I help clean it?" Lucia asks, referring to the fish preparation process that both children have learned to handle competently. "Of course," ANYU replies. "Tonight, we'll have fresh fish prepared by the whole family working together." The afternoon becomes a celebration of Diego's fishing success and the family's continued prosperity. They prepare the char using traditional smoking techniques that preserve flavor while ensuring nothing edible goes to waste. The children participate in every step, from cleaning and filleting to seasoning and cooking. ANYU uses the occasion to share stories about his own childhood fishing experiences, connecting Diego's achievement to the broader tradition of Arctic subsistence living. These narratives provide cultural context that transforms practical skills into spiritual practice, survival techniques into identity formation. "My grandfather caught his first fish when he was 7 years old," ANYU tells Diego as they worked together at the cleaning station. "He said that moment taught him he could take care of himself and others, that he was becoming a man capable of providing for his family." Diego absorbs this praise with serious attention, understanding that his fishing success represents more than childhood accomplishment. It marks his progression toward adult competence, his growing ability to contribute to family security rather than simply depending on others for survival. That evening, the family shares Diego's catch around their table, each bite flavored with pride in the boy's developing skills and gratitude for the abundance their Arctic lifestyle provides. The fish becomes more than food. It becomes proof of their successful adaptation, evidence that they've not only survived their crisis, but learned to thrive in circumstances that initially seemed impossible. Diego's fishing trophy will be remembered long after the meal is finished, a milestone that marks his transition from rescued child to capable contributor, from dependent family member to someone who can help sustain the people he loves. The memorial stone stands weathered but proud in the place of honor, ANYU selected near the cabin's entrance, its carved surface telling the story of two families united by loss and love. The granite monument, quarried from local stone and shaped by ANYU's patient craftsmanship, bears inscriptions in both English and Inuktitut that honor Margaret's memory while celebrating the new family that has grown from the ashes of old grief. Margaret Kanguk, beloved wife and grandmother, reads the English inscription, followed by traditional symbols that represent eternal love and spiritual continuity. Below that, newer carving celebrates Diego and Lucia Santos Kanguk, children of the heart, forever family, with the dates marking their official adoption 3 years ago. ANYU spent months planning and executing the memorial, working during quiet evening hours when the children slept, and Maria pursued her own projects. The stone represents his processing of complex emotions, grief for his lost wife, gratitude for his new family, and the spiritual integration of past and present that allows him to honor both without betraying either. "Tell us again about Grandmother Margaret," Lucia requests as the family gathers for their weekly ritual of tending the memorial garden that surrounds the stone. At 9 years old, she's developed deep appreciation for family history and her place within the continuing story of their unconventional clan. ANYU carefully weeds around the Arctic flowers they've planted in Margaret's honor, his weathered hands gentle with both plants and memories. "She would have loved you both immediately," he says, as he does each time they perform this ritual. "Margaret always said children were the best teachers. because they reminded adults how to see wonder in ordinary things. Diego, now 7 and increasingly confident in his role as family storyteller, adds details he's absorbed from countless retellings. And she made the best bannock bread in 3 provinces, and she could predict weather changes by watching bird behavior. And she taught Papa everything about growing food in the Arctic. The memorial stone has become the centerpiece for their family's spiritual practice, a place where they gather to mark important occasions, process difficult emotions, and connect their daily lives to larger meanings that extend beyond immediate concerns. It serves as both grave marker and altar, honoring the dead while blessing the living. Their success with the survival manual has generated income that allowed them to establish the Margaret Kanguk Foundation for Homeless Families, a non-profit organization that provides emergency assistance and advocacy for families facing crisis situations. The Foundation's office operates from their expanded cabin, staffed primarily by Maria, with support from volunteers who've been inspired by their story. Today we helped another family, Maria reports during their weekly memorial gathering, sharing updates about the Foundation's work as part of their ritual. A mother with 3 children from Manitoba. Their house fire left them with nothing, but we connected them with emergency housing and legal assistance. The Foundation has processed over 200 cases in its 3 years of operation, helping families navigate crisis situations with the practical knowledge ANYU and Maria gained through their own experience. Their published survival manual provides revenue, while their personal consultations offer individualized assistance for complex cases. Diego and Lucia participate actively in the Foundation's work, their perspectives as former homeless children adding authenticity to assistance programs. They help draft informational materials, participate in video testimonials, and correspond with children whose families are receiving Foundation support. We got a letter from Jimmy in Winnipeg, Lucia announces, sharing correspondence from a boy whose family the Foundation helped 6 months ago. His dad found work and they moved into their own apartment. He says our survival guide helped them convince social workers they could take care of themselves. The memorial stone witnesses these celebrations of successful intervention, its carved surface reflecting the family's evolution from crisis survivors to community resources. Margaret's memory has become intertwined with their mission to help others. Her legacy expanded through their commitment to preventing family separation. ANYU has added his own military service medals to the memorial display, hanging his decorations on a traditional wooden frame that stands beside the stone. The medals represent his previous life of service, now integrated with his current mission of family preservation and community assistance. Papa, when we grow up, will we work for the Foundation too? Diego asks as they complete their garden maintenance. You'll work for whatever calls to your heart, ANYU replies, but his smile suggests he'd be proud if they choose to continue the family mission. The Foundation exists because we survived our crisis and learned from it. If you find different ways to help people, that would honor Margaret's memory just as well. The memorial stone stands permanent and solid against the Arctic landscape, its message clear to anyone who reads the inscriptions. Families form through choice and commitment. Love transcends biology. And those who survive crisis have obligations to help others facing similar challenges. As evening light fades across their memorial garden, the family completes their weekly ritual by adding fresh flowers to Margaret's memory while planning next week's Foundation activities. Their past and future united in service to others who need the hope their story represents. The family totem stands 8 feet tall beside their cabin, its hand-carved surface telling the complete story of their journey from desperate strangers to permanent family. Each figure represents a family member's contribution to their shared identity, while traditional symbols connect their personal narrative to the eternal cycles of loss, rescue, and renewal that govern all life in the Arctic. 5 years have passed since that desperate night when Maria collapsed in the blizzard with her dying children. Diego, now 12, possesses survival skills that would impress seasoned outdoorsmen, while 14-year-old Lucia demonstrates the quiet wisdom of someone who has learned to find strength in unexpected places. Both children speak fluent Inuktitut, alongside English and Spanish, their trilingual abilities reflecting the cultural richness of their unconventional upbringing. "Remember when we thought we were going to die in the snow?" Lucia asks as the family gathers for the totem's dedication ceremony, her voice carrying the wonder of someone who can barely imagine her former helplessness. "I remember being very cold," Diego adds, his memories of that night filtered through childhood's merciful amnesia. "But I don't remember being scared after Papa found us." The totem represents more than family history. It embodies their evolution into community leaders whose story has inspired policy changes in family services across northern Canada. Their foundation has helped over 800 families navigate crisis situations, while their published survival guide has become required reading in social work programs at 3 universities. At the top of the carved pole, an eagle represents ANYU's role as protector and provider, its outstretched wings sheltering the figures below. Beneath that, a mother bear symbolizes Maria's fierce dedication to her children's welfare, her willingness to fight any threat to their security. The children appear as young wolves, representing their adaptation to Arctic life and their growing ability to contribute to family strength. Traditional symbols interweave throughout the carving. The aurora borealis representing hope after darkness, caribou tracks symbolizing the journey that brought them together, and delicate flower patterns honoring Margaret's memory and her continued spiritual presence in their lives. "Each symbol tells part of our story," ANYU explains to the small crowd gathered for the dedication. Representatives from the provincial government, Indigenous community leaders, and families they've helped through the foundation have come to witness this celebration of successful cultural integration and family formation. Minister Janet Blackstone from the Department of Family Services speaks about how their case has influenced policy changes that now recognize non-traditional family structures and cultural mentorship arrangements. The Santos Kanguk family demonstrates that love and commitment can create stability and security even in circumstances that initially appear irregular or risky. Their success has attracted academic attention from researchers studying family resilience and cultural adaptation. Dr. Patricia Mountain Horse from the University of Saskatchewan has documented their case as an example of successful Indigenous mentorship transcending ethnic boundaries. What makes this family remarkable isn't just their survival of crisis, Dr. Mountain Horse explains to the gathering, but their transformation of that survival into service to others. They've created a model for how traditional knowledge can address contemporary social problems. The dedication ceremony includes traditional blessings from Elder Mary Crow Feather, who honors the family's integration into the broader Indigenous community while respecting their multicultural identity. The spiritual recognition validates their journey from outsiders to community members. As the ceremony concludes, a spring blizzard begins developing on the horizon, the kind of storm that once would have terrified Maria but now simply requires practical preparation. The family recognizes the weather signs with the expertise of people who have learned to read the Arctic's moods and respond appropriately. "Looks like we'll have visitors tonight," ANYU observes, noting the storm's trajectory and intensity. Their cabin has become an unofficial way station for travelers caught by sudden weather changes. Their reputation for hospitality and competence drawing people who need temporary shelter. Sure enough, as the storm intensifies, headlights appear through the driving snow. A family with 3 young children has become stranded on the remote highway, their vehicle disabled by the extreme conditions. Without hesitation, Maria and ANYU organize a rescue operation using skills and equipment they've refined through years of helping others. Get the emergency supplies, Maria calls to Diego and Lucia, who respond with practiced efficiency. They know exactly what gear is needed, where everything is stored, and how to prepare for receiving hypothermic victims. As they help the stranded family into their warm cabin, wrapping frightened children in the same seal-skin blankets that once saved their lives, the circle completes itself. They've become the rescuers now, the ones who appear through storms to offer salvation to others who have lost hope. The hand-carved family totem watches over this newest rescue, its eternal figures bearing witness to the continuing cycle of survival and service that defines their purpose. Some families are born, others are forged through crisis and strengthened through commitment to helping others face similar challenges. Outside, the storm rages with familiar fury, but inside their expanded cabin, two families share warmth, food, and the kind of hope that can only be offered by people who have traveled the same desperate path and emerged stronger on the other side.